Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be starting episode 19 in our Catacombs series, where we try to take you on some deep dive tutorials for specific D2R edits. And today's topic is going to be all about creating an enemy that has the appearance and animations of a player. So if you wanted to have an Amazon, a barbarian, something like that, attacking people, on certain levels, this is how you can set something like that up fairly easily. So with all that said, as usual, if you guys are liking the content, make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out the video description below for links to our Discord, website, and our Patreon. And with that out of the way, let's roll right into the actual edits. So we'll start out by grabbing the text files that we'll be editing today. It's going to be real simple on that front, but let's go ahead and get the mod folder open. All right, and let's get those ready. So the files we'll be editing today are going to be levels.txt. That's going to help us spawn our monster in for the demonstration. And then for the actual monster edits, we're going to be using monstats.txt as well as monstats2.txt. For the text edits, that's all we need. However, we are going to edit some JSON files for the visuals and the animations of our new monster. So for that, we're going to go to Data, HD, Character. The first file we need is going to be monsters.json. This is just going to help us link our new monster file to the text files so that everything, again, just links properly. And for the actual monster JSON, we're going to have a folder in the mod called enemy. And that's where we want to put our JSON for that because, again, it is a new enemy type. However, because we're copying a player class, we are going to pull the JSON we need from the player folder instead. So you can use whatever player JSON you'd like as your kind of base, obviously depending on which class you're trying to use. For us, we're just going to use something like a Paladin. Seems kind of funny to have a, Paladin as the enemy. So for that, we need this will help control the visuals, and now we need the file that helps control his animations. So for that, we're going to go into the Paladin folder, and we're going to see a file called paladin statemachine.json. So we're going to go ahead and pull that out as well, and now we have all the files that we're going to be editing today. We'll look at a few others for just kind of reference, but these are the files we'll be actually editing. So for now, I'm just going to head and minimize that, and we're going to get the text file edits knocked out and taken care of real quick. So we're going to open up monstats.txt, and just a real quick side note, we're going to be cloning the skeleton 1 entry just because that's a decent enough base for demonstration purposes, but obviously clone the monster that's going to best suit what you're trying to do. So an example might be if you want an Amazon to appear as an enemy, then choose an enemy base like a corrupted archer or something like that that already has all its like melee range flags set, so it knows to use a bow and it's ranged and, that kind of thing, just so you're not editing as much, that you don't need to. So for us, a paladin, we just basically need him to swing and stuff for the demo, so a skeleton is just fine. So we're going to go ahead and clone that. And all we're really doing in this file is going to be updating names. Obviously change a few things as you need. For us, we're just going to call this new monster Paladin Enemy because we are very creative over here. We're going to update the ID and stuff even though some of this isn't needed. I'm just kind of OCD. For the base ID, we'll go ahead and update that to Paladin Enemy as well. Next in class, we'll remove. For the name string, we'll just go ahead and leave it calling it a skeleton just so we know it's definitely our edit. For our monstats ex entry, we'll also want to link a new entry in that file, and we'll also call that entry Paladin Enemy. We don't really need to change anything else, but I guess we can delete montype. I think Oh, for skeleton, I do need to delete one more thing, but we'll do that in the other file. So again, obviously, use the monster that works best for you. If you're trying to have a monster that can cast multiple skills and things like that, again, just choose the one that better fits for you, the AI that accomplishes what you need. But for us, all we really wanted to do was update the names. So we're going to go ahead and save that. We're all done there. Next, we're going to move on to the monstats2 file. This is that monstax.ex column that we just referenced. And once more, we're going to go ahead and clone our skeleton entry, and we're going to update the name. So obviously use what you named it there. We're just going to take care of that. The only thing we need to do two edits in this. Because it's no longer using a component system with the enemies, it's using this kind of player JSON file. We want to essentially manually assign which items it should use, which kind of visuals it should have. So for example, in this RHV column, this is the kind of right-hand visual for the monster. And you can see that it normally has all these different options on the item codes that this monster can equip. So axes, flails, hand axes, maces, scimitars. It can, equip all that. We're lazy today, so we're going to say, no, you can't. You can only wear a scimitar. And so we're going to put the item code for a scimitar in the right-hand visual so it knows to look for this item code. This will make sense in a couple minutes, I promise. And then the other edit we need to do is only because I'm using skeleton. There is a column here called composite death. Again, because we're no longer using components, we don't want the death animation to be based off components that don't exist. So we're going to remove that entry so it uses the death animations from the files. So those are the only two edits we need, and again, depending on what you're doing, edit things as you'd like. So we're all done there. We're going to save that, and finally, we're ready to spawn our new monster in. So we're just going to hop over to our old favorite Bloodmoor, and we're going to replace all the monsters in normal with our new one. So let's go ahead and update Paladin enemy, and we're going to replace all of them just so we definitely run into our enemy quickly. And we'll save that. So all of our text edits are done. Our monster's technically created, and it will spawn, but it has no visuals or anything yet because it doesn't know what to do with it. So for that, we're going to go ahead and just go into monsters.json, and we're going to add our new entry to link everything together. So we're going to put a comma here to let the JSON file know that it should read one more entry. And then we're going to put in Paladin enemy as the name of our monster, and then tell it to use the JSON file named Paladin enemy. Obviously, if you want to name your JSON something different, feel free, but that's all we need to do to link the text entry that we made to the JSON file that we want to use. So we're going to go ahead and save that. We're all set there. And let's go ahead and update the name to what we just told it to. So again, that was Paladin enemy. And before we get into the states, I'm going to go ahead and launch our mod and show you the progress of what we've done and help make sense of some issues. If you run into them yourself, you'll know kind of what went wrong. So with that said, as long as I didn't make any mistakes here, we should see that when we jump in, we can see our paladin. It correctly spawns and everything like that. So there we go. So you can see obviously they still have the slow speed and everything, but you also notice a few other quirks if I sit here for a minute. You can see that their attack animation is actually like a getting hit animation. If I do hit them, they quickly go into running mode real quick. If they die and then kick and then freeze after they kick. So essentially their animations are just all screwed up. And this is what happens because we didn't update the state machines they use. And the reason that's a problem is because players and monsters have a different structure to the animation tracks that they have. So real quick before I forget, actually, I'm going to hop into Monstats and adjust their running speed some. So we're going to set that, I don't know, something fast like 12, and just because it'll make sense in a minute. So anyways, we're ready to edit their actual states or the animations that they use to fix that up. So in our Paladin enemy JSON, again, this is the main JSON for your monster, we're going to format that, and we're going to find the state machine that it's currently using. And we're going to update the path to the state machine that we want it to use. So obviously our state machine file is no longer in the player folder, it's in the enemy folder, and we don't have a special Paladin subfolder. Obviously, if you want one, feel free to create one. And we're going to go ahead and call that state machine file Paladin enemy state machine. So that's all we needed to do here for now. We'll go ahead and add an item to our monster in just a few minutes. But for now, let's take care of our animations, and we're going to just update the state machine reference. So now that we've done that, we're ready to, again, rename this what we just told it it was using. And now we're ready to edit the actual animations. For this, we're going to want to scroll down about a third of the way or so, maybe. It looks like it's less than that on this file, until we get to the states section. This is where it's going to break down what animation to use based on what item type. So if you're using a bow, use this animation. If you're using a two-hand sword, use this one, etc. And the reason that's important is, once more, players and monsters have a different structure to the animations they use. So for reference and to show how this works, we're going to go into the enemy folder. We're going to find skeleton 1. You can actually use just about any enemy, but if they have special sequence animations or something, you might want to know about those. So we'll just use our base enemy, which for us is skeleton 1, and we're going to pull up that state machine file just like we did for our enemy version. We're going to format that once more. And I want to point your attention to something like, if we look at the attack 1 animation, it is currently using mode ID 4. That'll be important because if we look at our player version of this that we haven't edited yet, we can see that attack 1 uses a mode ID of 7. Now these mode IDs are essentially like the animation track to use. So even though it's looking at the correct animation, because it's told to use a different mode ID, when it uses that animation is all out of whack. So essentially all we need to do is update these player versions of the mode ID to the monster versions of the mode ID. So luckily we don't need to worry about all the rest of the stuff. This is a lot simpler than it looks. We just need to make the mode IDs match. So when we first start out, I'm going to go ahead and actually open this up in the side panel here, just so we can compare easier. We can see that for death, it uses a mode ID of 1 for the monster. Neutral uses a mode ID, death uses a mode ID of 0. Neutral uses a mode ID of 1, and walk uses a mode ID of 2. We can see that on the player, that is also true. Those all match up. We don't need to edit anything there. But as soon as we get to the run animation on the player, we can see that this monster doesn't have a run animation for that particular entry. So there's two ways we can accomplish fixing this. We can either use the same mode ID as walk, because we can either make them just always run or always walk. So you can set the mode ID to 2, so it uses the same track as walking. Or we can set it to 100, and I just call this the don't worry about it setting. Obviously that's not technically what happens, but if you set the mode ID to 100, it won't conflict with anything. It won't use the animation. It'll just kind of, don't worry about it. So we're just going to go down the list and essentially do that to match them all up. This should only take you 2 or 3 minutes, but it is kind of tedious. So for the town neutral, again, our monster shouldn't be in town, so it doesn't need a special animation for that. So we're going to have it use the normal neutral mode, which is mode 1. For town walk, once again, the normal walk, mode 2. And now we're ready to start updating the more important things like the actual attack and stuff. So again, attack 1 uses a mode ID of 4 on a monster, so we're going to update that. and we're going to go down the list and get everything updated. So we're going to get attack 2. We'll make sure block and cast and all that is, yep, okay. So 6 and 7. For throw, again, we don't, our paladin is not going to throw. If your monster is, then adjust this accordingly, depending on what you need. We're just going to tell it, don't worry about it. So again, once more, mode ID 100, same thing for the kick. For skill 1, it looks like we need to use mode ID 8. So let's go ahead and update these. These are all just the next number in line. And we're just about done. It only goes to about 14 for what we care about. And then we just need to find out some of the other ones. So dead is 12, knockback is 13. So dead is 12, knockback is 13, and there's only one more that's not quite in line. If we scroll down a little bit, we'll see a get hit for the player, and if we look back, get hit is actually mode ID 3 on a monster. So we're going to go ahead and update that to mode ID 3, and we've made all the edits that we need to. One kind of special note is if your monster happens to use a skill like a zeal or something, you know, a multiple attack or a special sequence like a leap, anything like that, then you'll need to know that players use a mode ID of 18 when they have a special sequence to use. Monsters use a mode ID of 14. So once more, if your monster happens to have Zeal as one of the skills, then just make sure you set your mode ID to 14 for all your special Zeal states, so that it uses that correctly. We don't have any special skills that our clone paladin is using right now, so we're just gonna kind of ignore those and save some work. So with all those changes, we should now be set. I'm going to go ahead and launch the mod once more, and we should see that not only do the visuals appear correctly, but now the animations also function correctly. So as long as I didn't screw anything up with a typo or duplicate IDs or something, then we should be all set. And there you go. So we can see they're much faster. They're still doing like a weird power walk thing, but we can adjust that. I'll show you how in a minute. And we can still see that they don't have any like actual items, but you can see now when they attack that they are attacking. So they're doing the correct animation. If I were to, strike one of them, they die correctly. They no longer do any weird kicking or freezing. When I hit them, they actually do the correct get hit animation. So all the animations are now linked correctly. But obviously you might want them to run. You might want them to actually swing an item, when they swing at you, that kind of things. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that real quick. It's fairly simple. So for that, again, just a quick reminder, in our Monstats 2 entry, we told it that we wanted to use a scimitar or SCM item code for its kind of right-hand visual. So while we're thinking about that, let me go ahead and close this. We don't need our skeleton reference anymore. We are going to open the skeleton kind of base folder, or base JSON, sorry, so that we can pull a component entity from it. So this will make sense in just a second here. Whoops, sorry. Got to go down to the JSON files. So if we look through this, I'm just going to do a quick search for scimitar. We can see that there's a entity for a right hand component attachment. So this again just signifies that attach it to the right hand of the model, and the variant is the item code to use. So it's told to use that same SCM item code that we told it in the text file, and then it also is going to define the JSON for that visual for the character. So all we want to do is this is one block of kind of code from this parentheses to the end of this one. So we want to copy that entire thing, And then we want to scroll to the bottom of our enemy JSON file. We want to find that same blue parentheses to line up with the other one. So again, we copied the blue parentheses. And so we're going to go ahead and add our comma to tell the JSON it's continuing. We're going to paste our entry, and then we can remove that last comma since it's not continuing further. And so now we've added a scimitar to our paladin by just kind of forcing that item visual onto him. Now, if you wanted to have multiples, you can set multiples here, and then you can add multiples in your JSON and set them with different item codes. We're lazy, we're just doing one item, but if you wanted your monster to have the possibility to spawn with, variations, then you can feel free to do that. This also applies to things like the buckler, the helm, the armor, deck them out how you like. But we are all set with our visuals. We're happy with that. But one thing that we do maybe want to change is our animation. It was using like a walking animation, even though they were walking very fast. So one thing we can do if we want them to use a run animation instead is if we look at the kind of let me look at this, show you this section. So this tells it, for example, when you're using a crossbow in the walk state, use this animation. These are all animations stored in a combined file in the monster folder, but essentially it breaks it down by weapon type. If you're using a crossbow, use this walk animation. If you're using a one-hand throwing weapon, use this one, blah, blah, blah. What we can do is we can just copy this and do a find replace. And we can say, I want anywhere where it says to use a walk animation to use a run animation instead. So we're just going to replace all and save that. And so now what we should see is that we've successfully added an item, a scimitar in this case, to our paladin in the right hand. So it should now swing that. And as well, it'll no longer kind of do its power walking. It'll do a normal run animation. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and make sure everything's working. And there we go. So they're using the run animation. We zoom in a little bit, we can see scimitars are definitely equipped now. So that is how you can create your own player enemies, essentially. Again, you can put them in different locations. You can customize them how you'd like. Just make sure you're choosing the proper kind of clone monster as a base to save yourself some trouble. But with that, I hope you guys have enjoyed the content. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Have a great day. Bye.